The autumn afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Whitmore College's main library, casting golden rectangles across the worn wooden floors. Outside, maple trees blazed in shades of crimson and amber, their leaves drifting down to carpet the pathways that crisscrossed the quad. The air carried that distinctive scent of fall, crisp, slightly smoky, tinged with the earthiness of decaying leaves and the promise of coming winter. I loved this time of year more than any other. There was something about autumn in the Midwest that felt like coming home, even though I'd grown up here and never really left. The seasons changed with such dramatic flair in this part of the country, and fall was the grand finale before winter's monochrome descended. My name is Julian Rivera, and I was a sophomore at Whitmore, majoring in fine arts with a concentration in drawing and painting. At 20 years old, I'd finally found my place in the world, or at least I thought I had. The art department had become my sanctuary, the studios my second home, and this library my favorite refuge when I needed to sketch real people instead of the endless still lifes our professors assigned. The library itself was a beautiful old building, constructed sometime in the 1920s when the college was first established. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, and the bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, requiring rolling ladders to access the highest volumes. The lighting came from antique brass lamps with green glass shades, casting pools of warm amber light across the study tables. Modern fluorescent lights had been installed years ago, but they were rarely used. The old lamps gave the place a timeless quality, as if stepping through those heavy oak doors meant stepping back into another era. I had claimed a corner table by the western windows as my regular spot. From here, I could watch the quad and the main entrance while remaining relatively hidden behind a pillar and a shelf of oversized art books. The table was scarred with decades of use, initials carved into the wood, coffee rings that had never quite washed away, the smooth depression where countless elbows had rested. My sketchbook lay open in front of me, its pages filled with quick studies and more finished portraits. I'd always been drawn to drawing people, the way light caught on a cheekbone, the subtle expressions that flickered across someone's face when they thought no one was watching, the stories written in the slump of tired shoulders or the bounce of an enthusiastic gait. Today, I was struggling with hands. They were notoriously difficult to render convincingly, all those tendons and bones and the way fingers tapered. I'd been sketching my own left hand, trying to capture the way it looked holding a charcoal pencil, when I heard the main doors swing open with their characteristic creak. I glanced up out of habit, always on the lookout for interesting faces and figures. And that's when I saw him. He entered with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin, a gym bag slung over one shoulder, his other hand pushing his wind-tousled hair back from his forehead. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of build that spoke of serious athletic training. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, muscular legs evident even through his faded jeans. He wore the university's athletic department hoodie in charcoal gray, the white and gold logo prominent across the chest. The sleeves were pushed up to his elbows, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. His sneakers were grass-stained and worn, the kind serious athletes wore for actual practice rather than fashion. But it was his face that captured my attention completely. Strong jawline, not harsh but defined. A straight nose that looked like it might have been broken once and healed well. High cheekbones. And eyes, even from this distance I could see they were a striking blue, the color of the sky on a perfect October afternoon. His hair was a rich brown, almost auburn in the afternoon light, falling in messy waves that suggested he'd either just rolled out of bed or spent the last few hours running drills on the practice field. He was laughing at something his companion said, another athlete though not as striking, and the sound carried across the quiet library. A few people looked up and frowned, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He scanned the room for an empty table, and I found myself holding my breath, praying he wouldn't walk all the way to the back where I sat. Of course he did. There were other empty tables, but he chose the one directly across the narrow aisle from mine, no more than 6 feet away. He dropped his gym bag with a soft thud, pulled out a chair, and settled into it with a sigh that spoke of physical exhaustion. His friend said something about meeting up later and left. The guy I desperately wished I knew his name pulled out a laptop and a thick textbook, opened both, and started to work. I should have gone back to my hand studies. I should have packed up my things and moved to a different table. I should have done anything other than what I actually did, which was stare. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows behind him, creating a halo effect around his silhouette. It caught in his hair, turning those brown strands to burnished gold. It illuminated the side of his face, highlighting the strong bone structure, the concentration in his expression as he read something on his screen. There was a small scar through his left eyebrow, barely visible, a slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, lips that looked soft, curved in a faint smile at whatever he was reading. My hand moved to my sketchbook without conscious thought. I flipped to a fresh page, grabbed my favorite charcoal pencil, a soft 6B that created rich, dark lines, and began to draw. I started with the overall shape of his head and shoulders, blocking in the basic proportions. Then I refined the outline, capturing the exact angle of his jaw, the way his neck met his shoulders, the slope of his nose. My pencil moved quickly, urgently, driven by the fear that he would look up and catch me, that he would gather his things and leave before I could capture even the essence of what I was seeing. I sketched his eyes next, trying to convey their intensity the way they focused so completely on the screen in front of him. The slight furrow between his brows, the way his lashes cast tiny shadows on his cheeks. I added the details of his hair, those messy waves, the way a few strands fell across his forehead. The charcoal made a soft scratching sound against the paper, a sound I'd long ago learned to make as quiet as possible when drawing in public. My technique was loose, impressionistic. This wasn't meant to be a photorealistic portrait, but rather a capture of a moment, a feeling, the way the light loved him. I was shading the curve of his shoulder when it happened. He looked up. His blue eyes met mine directly, and for a moment that felt like both an eternity and a split second, we simply stared at each other. I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered so hard I was sure he could hear it across the aisle. The charcoal pencil trembled slightly in my fingers. His expression shifted from the blank look of someone pulled from concentration to something more alert, curious. One corner of his mouth quirked up in the beginning of a smile as if to say, "Well, this is interesting." I felt heat flood my face. I dropped my gaze to my sketchbook, mortified. Of all the stupid, creepy things to do, sitting here drawing a complete stranger without permission, staring at him like some kind of stalker. What must he think of me? When I dared to glance up again, he was back to looking at his laptop, but that faint smile still played around his lips, as if he knew exactly what I'd been doing and found it amusing rather than disturbing. I tried to go back to drawing, but my hands were shaking too badly. I stared down at the portrait taking shape on my page. Even unfinished, it was some of my best work. I'd captured something essential about him, not just his physical appearance, but something deeper. The strength that was tempered with gentleness, the confidence that didn't tip into arrogance, the intelligence in those blue eyes. I didn't know his name. Didn't know anything about him beyond the obvious, that he was an athlete, probably football given his build, and that he had the kind of face that belonged in Renaissance paintings or on movie screens. But in that brief moment when our eyes met, something had shifted in the universe. I felt it like a physical thing, a thread connecting us across that narrow aisle, invisible but undeniable. I managed to add a few more details to the sketch, the exact curve of his lower lip, the shadow beneath his cheekbones, the way the light caught in his hair. Then I carefully closed my sketchbook, gathered my things as quietly as possible, and fled. I didn't look back. But as I pushed through the heavy library doors into the crisp autumn air, I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't the end. It was barely even the beginning. That night, lying in my narrow dorm room bed, I pulled out my sketchbook and studied the portrait by the light of my desk lamp. My roommate, Marcus, was out at some party, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my art. The drawing looked back at me, those charcoal eyes seeming to hold secrets I desperately wanted to know. I'd unconsciously signed and dated it in the bottom right corner, something I only did with pieces I considered finished and important. Who was he? I found myself wondering. What was his name? What was he studying? Was he kind? What made him laugh? What did his voice sound like? And the question I didn't dare voice even in the privacy of my own mind: would I ever see him again? I fell asleep with the sketchbook open beside me, my fingers still smudged with charcoal, dreaming of blue eyes and autumn light. The brew house occupied a converted Victorian home right in the heart of Whitmore's campus. Someone with more money than sense had gutted the interior decades ago and transformed it into the closest thing our small college town had to a European-style cafe. High ceilings with exposed beams, mismatched vintage furniture, walls painted in warm terracotta and deep forest green, and windows that let in floods of natural light. It was always busy, from the early morning coffee rush of bleary-eyed students to the late-night study sessions fueled by espresso and determination. The smell of fresh ground coffee beans mixed with the scent of pastries baking in the kitchen out back. Acoustic music played from hidden speakers, never too loud, always perfectly atmospheric. In autumn, they burned apple cinnamon candles that made the whole place smell like the inside of a spice cabinet. I'd been coming here since my freshman year, usually in the afternoons when I didn't have classes or studio time. I'd claim a table by one of the big bay windows, order my usual vanilla latte with an extra shot, and spend hours sketching the other patrons or working on assignments. The baristas knew me by name now, especially Keisha, a senior theater major who worked the afternoon shift and always drew elaborate designs in the foam of my lattes, hearts, leaves, even once an attempt at my face that had made me laugh so hard I almost snorted coffee out my nose. It had been 3 days since the library incident. That's how I'd started thinking of it, with capital letters and everything. The library incident. I'd been unable to get that guy's face out of my head. I'd drawn him 4 more times from memory, each attempt trying to recapture that perfect quality of light, that moment of connection. On Wednesday afternoon, I settled into my favorite spot by the window and pulled out my sketchbook. The weather had turned rainy, a cold drizzle that made the golden leaves stick to the sidewalks and created halos around the streetlights even though it was barely 3 o'clock. Perfect weather for holing up in a warm cafe with hot coffee and art. I'd been working for maybe 20 minutes trying to recreate that portrait from the library when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up automatically, a habit formed from years of people watching. My heart stopped. It was him. He stood in the doorway, shaking rain from his hair like a dog, wearing a denim jacket over that same gray athletic hoodie. His jeans were dark with rain at the hems, and he carried a backpack instead of the gym bag from before. He was even more striking in this light, the warm cafe glow making his skin look golden, his eyes impossibly blue. He stepped up to the counter and I heard his voice for the first time, deep, warm, with a slight southern drawl that suggested he hadn't grown up around here. Large black coffee, please, and maybe one of those chocolate croissants. Keisha rang him up and he paid, then turned to scan the cafe for a seat. The place was packed. Every table was full, people huddled over laptops and textbooks, the low murmur of conversation mixing with the acoustic guitar playing through the speakers. He stood there, coffee in one hand, plate with his croissant in the other, looking uncertain for the first time since I'd observed him. Our eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face. He remembered me from the library. That same small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Before I could process what was happening, he was walking toward me. Hey, he said, and God, his voice was even better up close. You're the guy from the library, right? The artist. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My throat had gone completely dry. Mind if I sit? He gestured to the empty chair across from me. Place is packed and you've got the best view of the rain. Sure, I managed to croak out, then more smoothly, yeah, of course, go ahead. He set down his coffee and plate, shrugged off his wet jacket and draped it over the back of the chair, then sat down with that same easy grace he'd had in the library. Up close, I could see more details, tiny freckles across the bridge of his nose, almost invisible. The way his eyelashes were darker at the tips than at the roots, a small dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. I'm Connor, he said, extending his hand across the table. Connor Matthews. I shook his hand, trying not to notice how warm and strong it was, how his fingers wrapped completely around mine. Julian Rivera. Julian, he repeated as if testing out the sound of it. That fits you. Fits me. Yeah, it's a good name, artist name. He took a sip of his coffee, then nodded toward my open sketchbook. I remember you were drawing in the library. You're really talented. I caught a glimpse when I looked up. The heat rushed to my face again. You saw. Hard not to when you're staring that intensely at someone. But his tone was teasing, not accusatory. I'm used to being stared at on the field, but usually not in the library. I'm sorry, I started. I didn't mean to be creepy, you were in really good light and I needed a reference for. He laughed, cutting off my rambling apology. Hey, it's cool, I'm flattered, nobody's ever thought I was worth drawing before. He broke off a piece of his croissant. So, art major? Yeah, sophomore, concentration in drawing and painting. Nice, I'm a senior, sports management major, football player. I figured, I said before I could stop myself. His eyebrows rose. Yeah. The build, the hoodie, the way you walk. The way I walk. Now I really wanted to die. I just mean athletes walk differently, more confident, like you own the space you're moving through. Connor leaned back in his chair, studying me with those blue eyes. You're really observant. Occupational hazard, I spend a lot of time watching people. For your art. Yeah, faces, expressions, body language, you can tell a lot about someone from how they carry themselves. What can you tell about me? The question caught me off guard. I looked at him, really looked. He was watching me with genuine curiosity, no trace of mockery or challenge in his expression. You're confident, I said slowly, but not arrogant, athletic, obviously, probably a leader, quarterback, or team captain, something like that. You're used to being the center of attention, but you don't seek it out. You take care of your body, but you're not vain about it, and I hesitated. And you've got kind eyes, like you'd stop to help someone who dropped their books even if you were late to practice. Connor blinked, and for a moment I thought I'd overstepped. Then he smiled, a real smile that made that dimple appear and crinkled the corners of his eyes. Damn, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Quarterback, team captain, and I definitely have helped people pick up dropped books. I laughed, surprised and relieved. What about me, what can you tell? He tilted his head, considering. You're creative, obviously, probably an introvert. You come here alone, sit by windows instead of in the middle where the energy is. You're observant as hell. You've got paint under your fingernails and charcoal smudges on your hands that you didn't notice. He paused, you're scared of something. There's this wariness in your eyes, like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now it was my turn to be surprised. Yeah, pretty much. What are you scared of? The question was gentle, genuinely interested. I looked down at my coffee. Lots of things: failure, disappointing people, being seen, not being seen, the usual existential crisis stuff. I get that, Connor said quietly. I'm scared of disappointing people too, my dad especially. He was a college football star, played semi-pro for a while. He's got these big expectations. Does he come to your games? Sometimes, when he can get away from work. He's a coach himself now, high school level back in Texas. That's where you're from, I thought I heard an accent. Born and raised, small town outside Austin. What about you? Born here, actually, about 30 minutes north. My parents still live in the same house I grew up in. We talked for over an hour. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like we'd known each other for years instead of minutes. He told me about the pressure of being team captain, the brutal training schedule, the upcoming championship game. I told him about my struggles with a watercolor class, my professor who was brilliant but terrifying, my dream of maybe teaching art someday. The rain continued to fall outside, turning the world soft and gray. Inside the brew house, the warm light and the smell of coffee and the sound of Connor's laugh created a bubble of perfect contentment. When he finally checked his phone and swore softly, I realized with a shock that it was almost 5:30. I've got to get to evening practice, he said, standing and gathering his things. But this was really nice. Thanks for letting me crash your table. Anytime, I said and meant it. He paused, jacket halfway on, and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You hear a lot. Most afternoons, when I'm not in class or the studio. Cool, maybe I'll see you around. Yeah, maybe. He smiled, shouldered his backpack, and headed for the door. Halfway there, he turned back. Hey, Julian. Yes. That drawing from the library, did you finish it? My face heated, sort of. Can I see it sometime? Maybe, I said, trying to sound casual even though my heart was racing. I'll hold you to that, and with a final wave, he was gone, disappearing into the rainy afternoon. I sat there for a long time afterward, my coffee gone cold, staring at the door he'd left through. Keisha appeared at my elbow, startling me. Girl, she said, using her nickname for all the regulars regardless of gender, please tell me you got his number. What? No, we just talked. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Julian, honey, that boy was flirting with you so hard I'm surprised my espresso machine didn't overheat from the steam. He was not flirting, he was just being friendly. And I'm just being friendly when I draw hearts in your latte foam. Keisha. I'm serious, that was some serious eye contact, some serious leaning in, some serious chemistry. If you don't get his number next time he comes in, I'm doing it for you. I laughed, but my hands were shaking slightly as I gathered my things. Was she right? Had Connor been flirting, or was I reading into things because I wanted it to be true? I pulled out my sketchbook and flipped to the portrait from the library. Connor's face looked up at me from the page, those blue eyes knowing, that slight smile mysterious. Next time I promised myself, next time I'd be braver. I had no way of knowing that next time would come sooner than I thought, or that brave would be the least of what I'd need to be. Connor started showing up at the brew house regularly. At first, I thought it was coincidence, then I started to suspect he was coming specifically to see me. He'd arrive around 3:30, right when the afternoon crowd was dying down and before the evening rush began. Always with coffee, black, no sugar, and usually some kind of pastry he'd pick at while we talked. He'd drop his stuff at my table without asking if the seat was taken, as if it was understood that we were now friends, that this was our thing. We talked about everything. Music, he confessed a deep love for indie folk and sad singer-songwriters, which seemed hilariously at odds with his jock image. Books, he was secretly working his way through the classics his literature professor had recommended, currently stuck in the middle of Moby Dick. Movies, we discovered a shared obsession with A24 films and spent an entire afternoon debating whether Moonlight or Lady Bird was the better movie. Moonlight, I insisted, the cinematography alone. Lady Bird has better character development, Connor countered, and the mother-daughter relationship actually made me cry. You cried watching Lady Bird. Don't tell the team, I've got a reputation to maintain, but he was grinning. He was easy to talk to, surprisingly so for someone who existed in such a different world from mine. His life revolved around practices and games, team dinners and film sessions. Mine revolved around studio hours and art history lectures, solo sketching sessions and gallery visits, but somehow we found common ground. One rainy afternoon, about 2 weeks after our first conversation, he pulled out his phone and thrust it toward me. Here, you need to listen to this. I took the phone, earbuds dangling from it. What is it? Just listen. I put in the earbuds and he started the song. It was Holocene by Bon Iver, all falsetto and guitar and lyrics about feeling small in the grand scheme of things. I'd heard it before, it was one of my favorites for late-night painting sessions, but I listened all the way through while Connor watched me, waiting for my reaction. It's beautiful, I said when it ended. Right, most people think I only listen to rap or heavy metal because I play football, but this, he gestured vaguely, this is the kind of music that makes you feel something, you know? Yeah, I do. He smiled, pleased. Your turn, show me something you love. I pulled out my own phone, scrolled through my music library and selected Motion Picture Soundtrack by Radiohead. We sat there in companionable silence, sharing the earbuds, letting Tom York's voice wash over us. The cafe buzzed around us, but we were in our own bubble. When the song ended, Connor sat back and looked at me with something like wonder. How do you do that? Do what? Understand, get it. Most people I know don't get why I like this kind of music. Most people I know don't get why I spend hours staring at a canvas trying to mix the perfect shade of blue. What shade of blue? He asked, genuinely curious. I looked at him, at the way the afternoon light caught in his eyes. Like your eyes, that exact color. I've been trying to recreate it for weeks and I can't get it right. His expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You're still drawing me. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Sometimes is that weird? No, his voice was soft. No one's ever paid that much attention to me before, not like this. People pay attention to you all the time, you're the star quarterback. They pay attention to what I can do, how many yards I can throw, how many games we can win, not, he gestured helplessly, not the color of my eyes. We stared at each other across the small table and the air between us felt charged, electric. I wanted to reach across and touch his hand. I wanted to tell him that I noticed everything about him, the way he tapped his fingers against his coffee cup when he was thinking, the small scar through his eyebrow that he'd gotten falling off a bike when he was 7, the way his whole face lit up when he laughed. But I didn't, because Connor was straight, probably, and even if he wasn't, I wasn't brave enough to risk this friendship for the possibility of something more. He broke the moment by clearing his throat and checking his phone. Shit, I've got to get to a team meeting, completely lost track of time. Sorry, I said automatically. Don't be, this is the best part of my day. Before I could process that statement, he was gathering his things, pulling on his jacket. At the door, he paused and looked back. Hey, Julian. Yes. Come to my game this Friday, I'll leave a ticket at will call. My heart stuttered, you want me to come to your game? Yeah, I want you to see me play, see what I do. Connor, I don't know anything about football. You don't have to, just come please. How could I say no to that? Okay, I'll be there. His smile could have powered the entire campus. Great, I'll look for you in the stands. And then he was gone, leaving me sitting there with a rapidly cooling latte and a head full of questions. Keisha materialized at my elbow immediately. You're going to his game. Apparently. Julian, honey baby, my sweet summer child, that boy is into you. He's not. He is literally inviting you to watch him do the thing he's most proud of. That's peacocking. He wants to impress you. He's probably just being friendly. He doesn't have a lot of friends outside the team. Girl, I'm going to hit you with this coffee pot. That is not friendly, that is interested. That is, I want you to see me be amazing so you'll like me back. Eh? I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the rational part of my brain kept insisting that this was all in my head, that Connor was straight, that I was setting myself up for heartbreak. That night, I pulled out my sketchbook and flipped through all the drawings I'd done of Connor over the past 2 weeks. There were dozens of them, quick sketches from the cafe, more finished portraits done from memory, studies of his hands, his profile, the way he smiled. I was falling for him, had already fallen really, and Friday's game would either give me hope or break my heart completely. Friday arrived cold and clear, the kind of November night where your breath clouds in front of your face and the stars are sharp as ice chips in the sky. I stood outside the stadium, bundled in my thickest hoodie and a scarf, feeling completely out of place. The parking lot was packed. Families in school colors, students already drunk and rowdy, alumni with their kids in tow. Everyone seemed to know where they were going, moving in a tide toward the stadium entrance. The fight song blared from speakers and I could hear the marching band warming up somewhere inside. I'd never been to a football game, never wanted to. The noise, the crowds, the aggressive masculinity of it all, it wasn't my scene. I preferred quiet galleries and intimate concerts, small gatherings where you could actually hear yourself think. But Connor had asked me to come, so here I was. The will call window was manned by a bored-looking student who barely glanced at my ID before handing over a ticket. Section B, row 15, seat 8, enjoy the game. I followed the crowds through the gates, past concession stands selling hot dogs and nachos and beer, up concrete stairs worn smooth by decades of feet. Section B was on the home side, about midfield, good seats I guessed, though I had nothing to compare them to. I found my seat between a family with 3 small kids all wearing foam fingers and a couple of older alumni who were already loudly debating the coach's strategy choices. The stadium was maybe 2/3 full, which I learned later was actually a good turnout for a Division II school. The lights were blazing, turning the field into a rectangle of vivid green against the darkness. The marching band was in formation on the track, brass instruments catching the light. Cheerleaders were doing some kind of choreographed routine on the sidelines. The opposing team, I couldn't remember who we were playing, was warming up on their side of the field. Then the announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your Whitmore College Warriors. The home team burst through a banner and onto the field and the crowd erupted. I found myself standing along with everyone else, swept up despite myself in the energy of it. The players were huge in their pads and helmets, numbers prominent on their jerseys. They ran out in formation, jumping and chest bumping and generally getting hyped up. I scanned the numbers looking for 22, Connor's number, and there he was near the front of the pack, helmet under one arm, grinning at the crowd. Even from this distance, even in his uniform, I recognized him. The way he moved, the set of his shoulders, that confidence. As if he could feel my eyes on him, he looked up at the stands. I knew he couldn't possibly pick me out in the crowd, but I waved anyway. And I swear he nodded just slightly before putting on his helmet and jogging to the sideline. The game started and I was immediately lost. I understood the basic concept, get the ball to the end zone, but the rules were a mystery. Why did they keep stopping? What was a down? Why was everyone screaming about holding? The family next to me took pity on my obvious confusion. The dad leaned over during a timeout and explained, "Okay, so they've got 4 tries, 4 downs to move the ball 10 yards. If they make it, they get another 4 tries." "What happens if they don't make it?" I asked. "Then the other team gets the ball." "Oh, that seems stressful." He laughed. "It is, but that's what makes it exciting." I tried to follow along, but mostly I just watched Connor. He was the quarterback, which meant he was the one calling plays and throwing the ball. Even I could tell he was good. The way he read the defense, the spiral of his throws, the way he could scramble out of the pocket when the protection broke down. The first quarter was scoreless, so was most of the second. The crowd's energy started to flag, people making runs to the concession stands, but I stayed glued to my seat watching Connor orchestrate the offense. Then, with about 3 minutes left in the half, something shifted. Connor completed 3 passes in a row, moving the team down the field in quick strikes. The crowd woke up, sensing momentum. On the next play, Connor dropped back, looked left, then fired a bullet to his receiver in the end zone. Touchdown! The stadium exploded. The band launched into the fight song. Everyone around me was jumping and screaming and hugging. I found myself grinning, caught up in the excitement despite my usual cynicism about sports. Connor pulled off his helmet, face flushed and sweaty, and looked up into the stands again. This time I was sure he found me, because he smiled, that smile I'd come to know so well over coffee and conversation, and pointed right at me. My heart stopped. The family next to me noticed. "You know him?" the dad asked, impressed. "Yeah, I managed, we're friends." "Friends with the quarterback, that's pretty cool." If you only knew, I thought. The second half was a defensive battle. Neither team could score. With 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we were up by 7. That single touchdown Connor had thrown was the only score of the game. The tension in the stadium was palpable. Then disaster struck. The other team intercepted one of Connor's passes and ran it back for a touchdown. Tie game. The stadium went silent. I could see Connor's shoulders slump on the sideline, but then the coach was there, hand on his helmet, talking intently. Connor nodded, squared his shoulders, and jogged back onto the field for the next drive. 2 minutes left, 1 timeout, 80 yards to go. I didn't understand the nuances of what I was watching, but I understood pressure. I understood high stakes, and I could see Connor marshaling his team, calling plays, making it happen. Short pass, 5 yards, clock still running, they hurried to the line. Another pass, 12 yards, first down, the crowd roared. 30 seconds, Connor dropped back, bought time with his feet, then launched a pass down the sideline, caught, 25 yards. 15 seconds, they were in field goal range now, they could kick and win. But Connor had other ideas. He called a play at the line, audible loud enough that I could hear it from the stands. The ball was snapped. He dropped back, pump faked left, then rolled right. A defender broke through. Connor spun away from him. I didn't know a guy that big could move like that, and suddenly he was in the open field. He ran, not toward the sideline to stop the clock, but straight up the middle toward the end zone. Defenders converged. The crowd was screaming so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. 10 yards, 5. Connor dove. The ref's arm shot up, touchdown. The stadium lost its mind, complete pandemonium. Strangers were hugging me, the band was playing at maximum volume, fireworks, actual fireworks were going off somewhere. On the field, Connor's teammates had piled on top of him. When they finally let him up, he pulled off his helmet, and even from the stands I could see his face was streaked with sweat and grass stains and pure joy. He looked up at the stands, found me, I knew he found me, and winked. That wink, the same one from the library, from the cafe, but this time with 50,000 watts of stadium lights behind him and thousands of people cheering his name. It was meant only for me. I stood there frozen while the world celebrated around me. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever this was between us, it wasn't just friendship. Not anymore, maybe it never had been. After the game, I waited in the parking lot like Connor had texted me to do during halftime. The crowd slowly dispersed, car engines starting up, people reliving the final drive in excited voices. I stood under a light pole, watching my breath cloud in the cold air, wondering what I was doing. He found me almost an hour later, freshly showered, hair still damp and curling at the ends, wearing jeans and his team jacket over a Whitmore hoodie. His gym bag was slung over his shoulder and he was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "You came," he said, slightly breathless like he'd run from the locker room. "I promised. What did you think?" "I think you're insane for running that last play instead of kicking." He laughed, the sound echoing in the nearly empty parking lot. Coach almost killed me, but it worked. It worked, I agreed. You were amazing out there. Yeah, he stepped closer and suddenly the air between us felt charged, electric. I kept thinking about you watching, I wanted to impress you. Mission accomplished. We stood there just looking at each other. The parking lot was mostly empty now, just a few stragglers in the distance. The stadium lights had been turned off, leaving only the street lights and the moon to illuminate Connor's face. Julian, he said quietly, my name soft in his mouth. Can I tell you something? My heart was pounding. Yeah. I don't just come to the brew house for the coffee. No. No, I come to see you. He ran a hand through his damp hair, looking nervous for the first time since I'd met him. These past few weeks talking with you, it's the best part of my day, every day. I think about it during practice. I check my watch during team meetings wondering if you're at the cafe yet. I couldn't breathe, Connor. I know I'm probably reading this wrong, he continued, words tumbling out now like he couldn't stop them. And if I am, we can just forget this conversation and go back to being friends, but I had to tell you, I had to. You're not reading it wrong, I interrupted. He stopped mid-sentence. What? You're not reading it wrong, I took a breath, gathering courage. I've been drawing you obsessively for weeks. I think about you constantly. When you're not at the cafe, I'm disappointed. When you are, I can barely concentrate on anything else. Julian, the way he said my name, full of wonder and relief and something that might have been joy, he stepped even closer, close enough that I could smell his soap, see the droplets of water still clinging to his hair. Can I kiss you? Every rational thought fled my brain. Yes. He closed the distance between us, one hand coming up to cup my cheek, and kissed me. His lips were soft, gentle, questioning. I kissed him back, my hands finding the front of his jacket, anchoring myself to him. The kiss deepened, his other arm wrapping around my waist and pulling me closer. He tasted like mint toothpaste and something uniquely him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since the library. The library. When I looked up and saw you staring at me like I was something worth capturing on paper, nobody's ever looked at me like that before. Connor, people look at you all the time. Not like you do, not like I matter beyond what I can do on a field. I reached up and traced the line of his jaw with my fingers. You matter, everything about you matters. He kissed me again, and this time there was less hesitation, more certainty. We kissed in that parking lot under the November stars, not caring who might see, not thinking about consequences. Just two people finally admitting what had been building between them for weeks. When we finally came up for air, Connor was smiling. So what now? Now, I repeated, slightly dazed. Now us, what does this mean? Reality came crashing back. Connor was the star quarterback. I was the art student nobody knew. He had a reputation, a team, family expectations. I had conservative Catholic parents who would disown me if they knew. I don't know, I admitted. I've never. Me neither, Connor said quickly. I've never felt like this about anyone, guy or girl, it's all new. We should probably take it slow, I said, even though every part of me wanted to rush forward. Slow, I can do slow. He pressed another quick kiss to my lips, but I'm not good at hiding how I feel, fair warning. Connor, the team can deal with it or not. I'm done living for other people's expectations. He sounded so certain, so sure. I wanted to share that confidence, but I knew the world wasn't that simple, especially not in a small Midwestern college town where football was religion and anything different was suspect. Let me drive you back to your dorm, Connor said, seeming to sense my anxiety. It's freezing out here. We walked to his truck, a beat-up Ford that had seen better days but ran well. He opened the passenger door for me and I climbed in. The interior smelled like him, like that cologne he wore, and something earthier like grass and leather. The drive to my dorm was short, too short. We didn't talk much, but Connor reached over and took my hand, lacing our fingers together. Such a simple gesture, but it made my heart soar. When he pulled up in front of my building, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in this warm truck with his hand in mine forever. I'll see you Monday, Connor asked, at the cafe. Monday, I confirmed, same time. I'll be there. I leaned over and kissed him one more time, quick and sweet. Then I got out of the truck and headed into the dorm, turning back once to see him still sitting there, watching to make sure I got in safely. I practically floated up to my room. Marcus was there, sprawled on his bed watching Netflix. "Where have you been?" he asked. "I texted you like 5 times. "The game," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. "Since when do you go to games?" "Since tonight." He studied me, eyes narrowing. "Why are you smiling like that? You look like you just won the lottery." "Maybe I did," I said mysteriously, and went to take a shower before he could interrogate me further. Under the hot spray, I replayed the kiss over and over, the way Connor's hands had felt on my waist, the soft sound he'd made when I'd kissed him back, the certainty in his voice when he'd said he wanted this. I was falling in love with Connor Matthews, had probably been falling since that first moment in the library, and terrifyingly, wonderfully, it seemed like he was falling too. That night I pulled out my sketchbook and tried to capture the moment, Connor under the stadium lights, arm raised in victory, eyes seeking me in the crowd. But my hands were shaking too much, my emotions too raw and new. Instead, I wrote at the bottom of the page, "The night everything changed." And I went to sleep with my phone on my pillow, hoping Connor might text, smiling even in my dreams. Monday came too slowly and too fast at the same time. I spent the weekend in a daze, alternating between euphoria and anxiety. Marcus caught me smiling at my phone approximately 3,000 times and finally demanded to know what was going on. "Nothing," I lied, "just a good week." Does this good week have anything to do with why you went to the football game? You hate sports." "I don't hate sports, I'm just not into them." Semantics spill. But I wasn't ready to tell him, wasn't ready to make this real by speaking it aloud. So I deflected and changed the subject, and Marcus, good roommate that he was, let me. Connor and I had been texting constantly. Nothing heavy, just little check-ins, good morning texts, photos of things that made us think of each other. He sent me a picture of an incredibly blue sky with the caption, "Finally found the right blue," and I sent him a photo of a painting I was working on, all warm golds and shadows. We traded songs. He called me late Saturday night and we talked for 2 hours about nothing and everything. "I miss you," he said at one point, voice rough with tiredness. "It's been 2 days." "I know, still miss you." By Monday afternoon, I was a bundle of nerves. I got to the brew house early, claimed our usual table, and tried to sketch to calm my racing thoughts. But my hands wouldn't cooperate, lines coming out shaky and uncertain. Keisha brought me my latte without being asked. "You're here early." "Just wanted to get some work done." She raised an eyebrow, and it has nothing to do with a certain quarterback who usually shows up around 3:30. "Maybe." "Girl, you've got it bad." "Is it that obvious?" "Honey, you're glowing. I could turn off the lights in here and use you as a lamp." I laughed despite my nerves. That's disturbing imagery. But accurate. He's a good one, that Connor. I've seen him in here before, always polite, always tips well, helps people pick up dropped stuff. You could do worse. "Keisha, we're just friends." She gave me a look that said she knew exactly what kind of friends we were. And I'm the Queen of England. 3:30 came and went. No Connor. I tried not to panic. He was probably just running late from practice or a class. But by 4 o'clock I was beginning to think maybe Friday night had been a mistake. Maybe he'd realized over the weekend that this was too complicated, maybe. The door chimed, Connor walked in, and my heart did its usual gymnastics routine. But something was off. His smile was strained, his shoulders tense. He ordered his coffee and came to sit down, but he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Hey." He set down his coffee, ran a hand through his hair. "Sorry I'm late, team meeting ran long." "It's okay, everything all right?" "Yeah, fine, just, Monday." But it wasn't fine. The easy conversation we usually had was stilted, awkward. Connor kept checking his phone, glancing around the cafe like he was expecting someone. When I asked about his weekend, his answers were short, clipped. After 20 minutes of painful small talk, I couldn't take it anymore. "Connor, what's wrong?" He looked up and I saw something in his eyes, fear maybe or guilt. "Nothing, I'm just tired." "Bull, talk to me." He was quiet for a long moment, fingers drumming against his coffee cup. Finally, he said, "Jake was asking questions today." My stomach dropped. Jake, Connor's roommate and a linebacker, the guy I'd seen him with sometimes, all loud laughter and backslapping. What kind of questions? About Friday night, where I went after the game, why I was in such a good mood all weekend. Connor's jaw clenched. He saw us in the parking lot. Oh no. What did he see? He didn't say exactly, just made some comments. You and that art kid seem pretty close. Interesting place to hang out after a game. Nothing direct, but Connor shook his head. He knows or suspects, and if Jake knows, the whole team will know by tomorrow. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too bright. I wanted to reach across the table and take Connor's hand, but I didn't dare. Not here, not where anyone could see. What do you want to do? I asked quietly. I don't know. His voice was rough, frustrated. Part of me wants to tell everyone to screw off, that it's none of their business, but the other part is scared. I finished. Yeah, he finally looked at me, really looked at me, and his eyes were full of conflict. I meant what I said Friday night about not hiding, but saying it in a parking lot and actually doing it in front of the team, my coaches, my dad. That's different. I got it, of course I got it, because I was terrified too. My parents, my hometown, the art department full of liberal professors who would probably be supportive but whose pity I didn't want to deal with. We don't have to decide anything right now, I said. We can take it day by day. Julian. I mean it, no pressure, we figure it out as we go. He reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, then caught himself and pulled back. That small, aborted gesture hurt more than anything else. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a few more minutes before Connor checked his phone and said he had to get to a study session. He left without the usual warmth, without the lingering looks, without any of the things that had been building between us. I stayed at the cafe for another hour, staring at my untouched sketchbook, feeling the fragile bubble we'd built starting to crack. Keisha came by to refill my coffee. What happened? Reality, I said bitterly. She squeezed my shoulder. Give him time. Coming out is hard, especially for guys like him, all that pressure, all those expectations. I know, I thought we were on the same page. You are, he's just scared, doesn't mean he doesn't care. I wanted to believe her, but as I walked back to my dorm in the gathering dusk, I couldn't shake the feeling that Friday night had been the peak and it was all downhill from here. The next few days were torture. Connor still came to the cafe, but the easy intimacy we'd had was gone. He sat across from me and we talked, but carefully, like we were walking on eggshells. He never touched me, never let his gaze linger too long. We were play acting at being casual friends, and it was killing me. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours in the studio. My paintings got darker, angrier, slashing brushstrokes in blacks and deep reds. My professor, Dr. Chen, pulled me aside after class one day. Julian, these new pieces, they're technically excellent, but there's a lot of pain here. Are you okay? Fine, I lied, just exploring some new emotional territory. She didn't look convinced, but didn't push. Art is therapy, but sometimes therapy is therapy too. We have counseling services on campus if you need them. I thanked her and left, but I knew therapy couldn't fix this. Only Connor could, and he seemed determined to keep me at arm's length. A week after the game, everything came to a head. Connor had invited me to a small party at a teammate's house. Just a few guys, pizza and movies, he'd said. I'd hesitated, knowing I wouldn't fit in with his football friends, but he'd practically begged. I want you there, please. So I went. The house was off campus, a rental that clearly housed college guys. Empty pizza boxes, gaming consoles, posters on the walls. Hip-hop was playing from a Bluetooth speaker, and about 10 guys were scattered around the living room, all big and loud and comfortable with each other in a way I'd never been with anyone. Connor greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You made it. Said I would. He introduced me around. Most of the guys were polite, if not particularly interested. I was clearly an outsider, but they tolerated my presence because Connor had vouched for me. I sat on the edge of the couch nursing a beer I didn't really want, listening to them rehash the game, make plans for next week's matchup, razz each other about missed blocks and dropped passes. Connor sat next to me, but there was careful space between us. His knee didn't touch mine, his arm didn't casually drape across the back of the couch. We were two separate entities and everyone could see it. Then Jake walked in. He was huge, easily 6'5" and 250 pounds of muscle. Buzzed hair, loud voice, the kind of guy who dominated every room he entered. He grabbed a beer from the cooler and surveyed the room, his eyes landing on me with unconcealed curiosity. "Connor," he said, plopping down in a chair across from us, "this the art kid you're always talking about?" "Julian," Connor said, his voice tight. "His name is Julian." "Right, Julian." Jake took a long pull from his beer, never taking his eyes off me. "You two are pretty tight, huh? Always at that coffee place together." The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, sensing drama. "We're friends," Connor said. "Friends?" Jake grinned, but there was nothing friendly about it. "Funny, I've never seen you spend that much time with any of your other friends." Jake, Connor started. "What?" Jake spread his hands innocently. "I'm just saying, you're always with him, coffee dates, late-night texts." Some of the guys were starting to wonder. "Wonder what?" Connor's voice had gone hard, dangerous. Jake leaned forward. "If maybe you're not as into girls as you let on." The air went out of the room. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My face burned, but I couldn't tell if it was from shame or anger. Connor sat frozen next to me. I willed him to say something, anything, tell Jake to shut up, defend me, defend us. But he just sat there, fists clenched on his thighs, staring at the floor. Jake wasn't done. "I mean, look at him." He gestured to me with his beer bottle. "Pretty boy artist type, totally gay, right? And you're spending all your time with him. People talk, man." A few guys laughed, not mean laughter exactly, but uncomfortable, like they didn't know what else to do. I waited for Connor to stand up for me, for us, for what we'd admitted to each other in that parking lot. But Connor stayed silent. Something inside me shattered. I stood up, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to keep it steady. "I'm going to head out." "Julian," Connor finally looked up, his eyes full of guilt and fear. "It's fine, I've got an early class anyway." I walked out of that house into the cold November night, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall until I was out of sight. Behind me I heard Jake's voice, loud and cruel. "See, told you he was gay." And Connor's silence, louder than any words. I walked back to campus, a 20-minute trek that felt like hours. By the time I reached my dorm, I was crying in earnest, angry tears that left my face wet and cold. Marcus took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. He didn't ask questions, just let me cry on his shoulder until I had no tears left. When I finally pulled away, he said, "What happened?" So I told him everything. The library, the cafe, the game, the kiss, the past week of careful distance, tonight's disaster. It all poured out, and when I was done, I felt empty and exhausted. "Connor's a coward," Marcus said flatly. "He's scared. Being scared doesn't give him the right to treat you like that, to let his asshole friend talk about you that way while he just sits there." I know, and I did know. That's what hurt the most. I understood why Connor was scared. I was scared too, but there was understanding and there was acceptance, and I couldn't accept being treated like a dirty secret. My phone buzzed, a text from Connor. "I'm so sorry, can we talk?" I turned off my phone and went to bed. I avoided Connor after that. It wasn't hard, we didn't have any classes together, and I knew his schedule well enough to avoid the cafe during his usual times. When he texted, I didn't respond. When he called, I let it go to voicemail. Marcus thought I was being too harsh. At least hear him out. What's there to hear? He made his choice. Maybe he's sorry, maybe he wants to make it right. And maybe I don't want to be someone's shameful secret. I threw myself into my art with a vengeance. I stopped sleeping regular hours, instead spending nights in the studio, painting until my eyes burned and my hands cramped. The canvases that emerged were dark and visceral, figures turning away from each other, vast empty spaces, clashing colors that hurt to look at. Dr. Chen was concerned. So was Keisha, who cornered me at the cafe one afternoon when I'd finally ventured in during Connor's practice time. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, setting down a latte I hadn't ordered. "Thanks, really boosting my confidence here." "I'm serious, when's the last time you slept?" "I sleep when you've got bags under your bags and you've lost weight." She sat down across from me uninvited. "This is about Connor." It wasn't a question. I slumped in my chair. He came by. Every day, same time, orders coffee, sits here for an hour hopping. You'll show up, then leaves. kid looks about as miserable as you do. Good. Julian. He let his friend call me gay like it was an insult while he sat there and said nothing. Keisha, nothing. I stood up and walked out and he didn't even try to stop me. She was quiet for a moment. That's fair, what he did was shitty, but have you let him explain? What's to explain? Maybe that he's a 22-year-old kid who's terrified of disappointing his family and losing his team and screwing up his whole future. Maybe that he's never felt this way about anyone before and it scares the hell out of him. I wanted to stay angry. Anger was easier than hurt, but Keisha's words needled at me. He still should have said something, I said, but with less conviction. Absolutely, he should have, but people screw up, especially when they're scared. Doesn't mean they don't deserve a second chance. She left me with my latte and my thoughts. I sat there for hours watching the light change outside the windows, thinking about Connor, about the way he'd looked at me in the library, the conversations at this very table, the kiss in the parking lot that had felt like coming home. But also about the silence at that party, the careful distance in the cafe afterward, the fear in his eyes when Jake had confronted him. Could I forgive that, should I? My phone was full of his messages. I'd read them all even though I hadn't responded. They started apologetic. "I'm so sorry, I should have said something, I was a coward." Gradually became more desperate. "Please talk to me, I miss you, I know I screwed up but please give me a chance to explain." The most recent from this morning, "I understand if you never want to see me again, I just want you to know that these past weeks with you have been the best of my life. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to show it when it mattered." I stared at that message for a long time. That night I pulled out my sketchbook. I'd been avoiding it, unable to look at all those drawings of Connor without feeling my chest tighten. But now I flipped to the very first one, the portrait from the library, all soft lines and golden light. I picked up my pencil intending to scribble it out, to destroy it like he'd destroyed what we'd started to build. But when the pencil touched paper, my hand shook. I tried again, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't erase him, not even in charcoal and paper. Instead, I found myself tracing over the existing lines, darkening them, adding details I'd missed the first time, the exact curve of his smile, the way his hair fell, the kindness in his eyes that I'd seen that very first day. I drew until my hand cramped, and when I was done, the portrait looked more alive than ever. Not a stranger in a library, but Connor, the person I'd fallen for despite all my better judgment. The person I missed with an intensity that physically hurt. I set down my pencil and made a decision. Tomorrow I would go to the cafe at our usual time, and if Connor showed up when Connor showed up, I would let him explain, I would listen, and then I would decide if what we'd started was worth fighting for. I fell asleep with my sketchbook open, Connor's face watching over me from the page. Across campus, Connor sat in his dorm room, staring at his phone, waiting for a response that wouldn't come. His roommate Jake had been subdued since the party, sensing he'd crossed a line but too proud to apologize. The rest of the team had been treating him normally, seemingly oblivious to the turmoil beneath Connor's calm exterior. But he wasn't calm, he was drowning. He'd replayed that night at the party approximately 10,000 times, each replay making him hate himself a little more. Jake's cruel words, Julian's face carefully blank except for the hurt in his eyes, his own pathetic silence. He'd wanted to speak up. The words had been right there in his throat. "Shut up, Jake, he's not just my friend, he's important to me, more than important." But fear had choked them off, fear of judgment, fear of his father's reaction, fear of losing the life he'd built. And in being afraid of losing everything, he'd lost the one thing that actually mattered. Julian. Connor had driven to Julian's dorm 3 times, had walked up to the building, had even made it into the lobby once. But each time he'd lost his nerve and turned back. What would he even say? How could he possibly make this right? His phone sat silent on his desk, mocking him. No new messages, no calls, nothing. He'd talked to his mom earlier, she'd called to congratulate him on the game, and he'd almost broken down and told her everything. But how did you tell your mother, the woman who'd raised you in a conservative Texas town, that you'd fallen for a guy, that you'd screwed it up completely because you were too scared to be brave when it mattered? Instead, he'd made small talk about classes and football and promised to come home for Thanksgiving. After she hung up, he'd sat in the dark of his room and let himself cry. Not the angry tears of frustration, but the helpless tears of someone who'd had something precious and thrown it away with both hands. He thought about Julian constantly, the way he tilted his head when he was really listening, the way his hands moved when he talked about art, the small sounds he made when he was concentrating on a drawing, the way he'd looked at Connor like he was something worth capturing on canvas, worth spending time with, worth loving. Connor had never been in love before. He'd dated girls in high school and college, but it had always been surface level. Nice enough, but never this consuming feeling that made everything else seem pale in comparison. With Julian, everything was brighter, food tasted better, music sounded richer, the world had more color, and without him it had all gone gray. Tomorrow, Connor decided, tomorrow he would go to the cafe like he had every day for the past 2 weeks. He would sit at their table and hope, and if Julian didn't show up again, well, he'd keep hopping, keep trying, because giving up wasn't an option. Not when it came to Julian. He typed out one more message, even though he knew it probably wouldn't get a response. I love you, I should have said it when I had the chance. I should have said it in front of everyone. I'm sorry I was too scared. If you give me another chance, I'll spend every day proving I'm brave enough for this, for us. He hit send, then turned off his phone and tried to sleep, knowing that rest wouldn't come easy. The next day, Monday, dawned cold and clear. I woke up with determination humming through my veins. I spent the morning in classes, barely paying attention to lectures about color theory and composition. At lunch, I couldn't eat, my stomach twisted in anxious knots. Marcus noticed, "You okay? I'm going to see him today." Connor. Yeah, at the cafe, our usual time. Good, it's about time. You two have been miserable without each other. We haven't been together long enough to be miserable apart. I protested weakly. Doesn't matter how long, when you know, and you know. Did I? I thought about it as I walked to the brew house at 3:15, 15 minutes before Connor usually showed up. Yes, I knew. I'd known since that first moment in the library, if I was being honest with myself. Known that this person was important, that he could hurt me worse than anyone else, that he was worth the risk anyway. The question was whether he knew it too. I claimed our table and tried to sketch, but my hands were too unsteady. So I just sat there, nursing a latte, watching the door, my heart in my throat. 3:30 came, no Connor. 3:40, still nothing. By 3:50, I was beginning to think he'd given up, that my 2 weeks of silence had convinced him to move on. The thought made my chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with physical pain. Then the door opened. Connor walked in and my breath caught. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his face drawn, his usual confidence replaced by something that looked like barely held together desperation. He ordered his coffee without his usual smile for the barista, then turned to scan the room. Our eyes met. The world stopped. I saw the exact moment he registered that I was really there, not a figment of his imagination like I must have been for the past 2 weeks. His eyes widened. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something but couldn't remember how words worked. Then he was moving, crossing the cafe in quick strides, nearly spilling his coffee in his haste. He stopped at the table, hovering uncertainly. Julian. Connor, my voice came out steadier than I felt. Sit down. He sat, setting his coffee down with hands that trembled slightly. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. You read my texts, he finally asked. All of them. Then you know I'm sorry, I'm so goddamn sorry, Julian. What I did, what I didn't do, there's no excuse. No, I agreed, there isn't. He flinched like I'd hit him. I was scared, terrified, of my team finding out, of my dad, of losing everything I've worked for, but that's not an excuse, because by staying silent I lost the only thing that actually matters. Which is? You. The word was simple, stark, devastating. I lost you, and these past 2 weeks have been hell, going to the cafe hoping you'd show up, checking my phone constantly, lying awake wondering if you hate me. I don't hate you, I said quietly. Hope flickered in his eyes. No. No, I've tried, would be a lot easier if I could, but I don't. Julian. I held up a hand, stopping him. Let me finish. I don't hate you, but that doesn't mean what you did was okay. You let Jake say those things about me, about us, and you said nothing. You just sat there while I walked out. I know. Do you? Because it wasn't just about you being scared to come out, it was about you being ashamed of me, of what we could be together. No, Connor leaned forward urgent. No, Julian, I was never ashamed of you. How could I be? You're the best person I know, you're talented and kind, and you see the world in this beautiful way that I'm constantly in awe of. If anything, I'm ashamed of myself for not being brave enough, for caring more about what Jake and the team thought than about standing up for you. Tears were forming in his eyes. I'd never seen Connor cry before. I don't know how to do this, he continued, voice breaking. I've never felt this way about anyone. I've never had to choose between being who everyone expects me to be and being who I actually am, and I made the wrong choice. I chose fear over you, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I felt my own eyes stinging. Connor. I texted you last night, told you I love you. I meant it. I do love you, Julian. I think I've loved you since the library, since that first time you looked at me like I was more than just a guy who throws a football. The words hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. Say something, Connor whispered. Please, tell me I haven't completely destroyed this. Tell me there's a chance. I love you too, I interrupted. He stopped mid-sentence, staring at me. What? I love you too. I've been trying not to these past 2 weeks, trying to convince myself that it was just a crush, that I'd get over it, but I can't. I tried to scribble out your portrait and I couldn't even do that. A strangled laugh escaped him. So what does that mean for us? I took a deep breath. It means I'm willing to try again, but things have to be different, Connor. I can't be your secret. I can't sit around waiting for you to decide if I'm worth the risk. You're worth everything. Then prove it, not right now, not all at once, but eventually. We move at whatever pace you're comfortable with, but we move forward, together, not hiding, not pretending we're just friends when it's killing both of us to maintain the distance. Connor reached across the table and took my hand, right there in the middle of the crowded cafe where anyone could see. His fingers laced through mine and I felt that electric connection spark back to life. Together, he agreed, I'll talk to Jake, set him straight about the disrespect, and I'll work on being braver, on not letting fear control me. I'm scared too, I admitted. My parents would lose it if they knew. Most of my hometown would turn their backs on me. I get the fear. But you walked out of that party with your head held high. You were braver than me. I was hurt, there's a difference. We sat there, hands linked, looking at each other across the small table. Keisha walked by, saw our joined hands, and gave me the biggest smile I'd ever seen. She gave us a thumbs up and kept walking. Connor laughed, a real laugh this time. I think the barista approves. Keisha's been rooting for us from day one. Smart woman. We stayed at the cafe for hours talking through everything. Connor told me about the past 2 weeks, the guilt that had been eating him alive, the nightmares where I walked away over and over, the way everything had felt colorless without me. I told him about the dark paintings, the sleepless nights, the way I'd tried and failed to erase him from my life. I talked to my mom last night, Connor said. After I sent you that last text, I didn't tell her about us, but I told her I'd met someone who made me really happy, someone I'd hurt because I was too scared to be honest. What did she say? She said that real happiness is rare, and when you find it, you fight for it, even if it's scary, even if it's not what you planned. He smiled softly. She's smarter than I give her credit for sometimes. Are you going to tell her about me? Eventually, not yet. I need to figure out how to approach it, but yeah, eventually, because if this is real, if we're doing this, then I want my family to know, I want everyone to know. My heart swelled. We don't have to rush. I know, but I'm done hiding who I am. It might take me some time to work up to it, but I'm done. When we finally left the cafe, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Connor walked me back to my dorm, our hands still linked, and I didn't care who saw. At my door, he pulled me close and kissed me. Different from that first kiss in the parking lot, this one was slower, deeper, full of promises we were both determined to keep. I miss this, he murmured against my lips. Me too. Can I see you tomorrow? You can see me every day if you want. He grinned, careful, I might take you up on that. I hope you do. One more kiss and then he was heading back to his own dorm, turning back every few steps to wave, both of us grinning like idiots. Marcus took one look at my face when I walked in and said, You talked to him. We talked. And And we're going to try again, for real this time. Good, I was getting worried about you, haven't seen you smile like that in weeks. I couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop touching my lips where Connor had kissed me, couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd held my hand in public, the way he'd said he loved me, the way he'd promised to be braver. We had a long road ahead. Coming out wasn't going to be easy for either of us. There would be judgment, pushback, maybe even real consequences. But as I fell asleep that night, I felt hopeful for the first time in 2 weeks. Because we were in this together now, and that made all the difference. The next few weeks were a study in careful courage. Connor and I didn't broadcast our relationship, but we stopped hiding it too. We held hands at the cafe. I started coming to his games regularly, sitting in the same spot where I could see him and he could see me. He spent more time at my dorm and I at his apartment. Jake was the first real test. Connor had gone back to their shared apartment that night after the cafe and confronted him. I wasn't there, but Connor told me about it later. I told him what he said at that party was unacceptable, Connor had said. That Julian is important to me, that if he can't be respectful, we're going to have a problem. How did he take it? Better than I expected, actually. He apologized, said he was drunk and being an ass, that he didn't actually care who I dated. Connor had paused. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, but at least it's not hostile. The rest of the team was harder to read. Some of them were supportive. A few had texted Connor privately saying they didn't care, that he was still their quarterback and their captain. Others were clearly uncomfortable but kept it to themselves. And a few made it clear through silence and distance that they didn't approve. Connor handled it with more grace than I would have. He kept showing up to practice, kept leading the team, kept being himself, and slowly most of the guys came around. When you're winning games, apparently people care less about your personal life. The real test came when his father called. It was a Tuesday evening. Connor and I were in my dorm room, sprawled on my narrow bed, watching a movie on my laptop. Marcus was at the library giving us privacy. Connor's phone rang, and when he saw the caller ID, his whole body tensed. "It's my dad," he said. "You want me to leave?" "No, stay," he answered the call, putting it on speaker. "Hey, Dad." Connor, his father's voice was deep, gravelly, pure Texas. "Got a call from Coach Henderson today." Connor sat up straighter. "Oh." Said there's been some talk around the team, something about you and some boy. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Connor's jaw working, his fists clenching and unclenching. I reached over and took his hand. "It's true," Connor finally said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "I'm seeing someone, his name is Julian." Another long pause. I could hear Connor's father breathing on the other end. "That true?" his father asked. "You're telling me you're gay?" "I don't know, maybe. I haven't figured out all the labels yet, but I know I care about Julian more than I've ever cared about anyone." Jesus Christ, Connor! The disappointment in those 3 words was crushing. "After everything I taught you, everything this family stands for." "This family stands for honesty and hard work," Connor interrupted, his voice stronger now. "You taught me that, and I'm being honest with you now. This is not what I meant, and you know it. What about your future, your career? You think NFL scouts are going to want someone who? Then they don't want me. I'm not going to live my life hiding who I am just to make other people comfortable." I squeezed his hand. He squeezed back hard enough to hurt, but I didn't let go. "I'm disappointed in you, son." His father's voice was cold now. "Really disappointed. I need some time to think about this, about whether I can keep supporting your education if you're going to make these kinds of choices." "That's your call," Connor said, and I heard his voice waver for the first time. "But I'm not going to change who I am, not for you, not for anyone." "We'll talk later," and the line went dead. Connor sat there for a long moment, phone still in his hand, staring at the blank screen. Then his shoulders started shaking. I pulled him into my arms and he buried his face in my neck and cried. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "God, Connor, I'm so sorry." "Don't be." His voice was muffled against my skin. "This isn't your fault, it's his, for being too stubborn to see that I'm still the same person. He'll come around, give him time." "What if he doesn't? What if he cuts me off? I can't afford tuition on my own, Julian. I'll have to drop out." Then we'll figure it out. You can get loans, scholarships, work more hours, whatever it takes. He pulled back to look at me, eyes red and face blotchy. Why are you being so calm about this? Because panicking won't help, and because you're worth fighting for. He kissed me then, desperate and grateful, and we held each other until the tears stopped and the fear receded to a manageable level. True to his word, Connor's father stopped sending tuition money. The next semester's bill came due and there was no check from Texas. Connor's mother called, apologizing, saying she was trying to talk sense into her husband, but he was stubborn as a mule. I love you no matter what, she told him, and Connor cried again, relief and heartbreak mixing together. Connor got a job coaching youth football on weekends, then he picked up bartending shifts at a place near campus 3 nights a week. He started looking into loans and grants. It was overwhelming and exhausting, but he did it without complaint. I tried to help however I could. I started selling some of my artwork, small pieces at first, then bigger ones as word got around. I took on a work-study position in the art department, helping Dr. Chen set up for classes. It wasn't much, but every little bit helped. We were exhausted all the time, running from classes to jobs to studying to the brief moments we could steal together. But we were doing it together. The art department became my unexpected support system. Dr. Chen had figured out about Connor and me. She was observant and had noticed the shift in my work from dark and tortured to hopeful again. She called me into her office one day. Julian, I want to feature your recent work in the spring student exhibition. I blinked. Really? Really? The series you've been working on, the portraits, the pieces about identity and courage, they're powerful. The exhibition is juried and I think you have a real shot at winning the prize. What prize? $5,000 and a solo show in the campus gallery next fall. $5,000, that could help with Connor's tuition. That could be a buffer while we figured everything out. I'm in, I said immediately. I threw myself into preparing for the exhibition. I selected my best pieces, including several portraits of Connor in various lights and moods. One showed him on the field, helmet off, face streaked with sweat and grass stains, eyes bright with triumph. Another showed him in the cafe, soft afternoon light painting him in golds and browns, that gentle smile I loved. A third was more abstract, 2 figures reaching for each other across a divide, but their fingers were just touching, connection made despite the distance. I titled the series Learning to be Brave. Connor came to see the exhibition the night before it opened to the public. We walked through the gallery hand in hand and I watched his face as he took in the pieces. He stopped in front of the portrait of him from the cafe. Is this how you see me? Yeah, why? I look happy, peaceful. I didn't realize I could look like that. You do, when we're together, when you're just being yourself and not trying to be what everyone expects. He turned to me, eyes shining. You're going to win this thing. You don't know that. I do, because these pieces, Julian, they're incredible. They tell a story, our story. The exhibition opened on a Friday. The turnout was bigger than expected. Students, faculty, some local community members. People moved through the gallery studying the various works on display. There were sculptures, photographs, mixed media pieces, and several painting series besides mine. I stood nervously in the corner with Connor, trying not to watch people's reactions to my work. But I couldn't help noticing when people stopped in front of my portraits, when they leaned in to read the title cards, when they whispered to their companions. Dr. Chen appeared at my elbow. There are a lot of people interested in your series. Yes. Yeah, I've had 3 people ask if the pieces are for sale. My heart jumped. Seriously? Seriously, the portrait from the cafe, someone wants to buy it for $2,000. I looked at Connor. That was real money, money we desperately needed. But it was also him, captured in one of my favorite moments. Could I really sell that? Connor seemed to read my thoughts. You should sell it. If someone wants to pay that much, you should let them. But, Julian, it's incredible that someone values your work that much, and we need the money. I need the money. What if I want to keep it? He smiled. Then paint me again, paint me 100 more times. I'm not going anywhere. I sold the cafe portrait, and 2 others. By the end of the night, I'd made almost $4,000, not quite the prize money, but close. The prize announcement came at the end of the evening. Dr. Chen stood in front of the crowd and talked about the caliber of work on display, how proud the department was of all the students. Then she opened an envelope. This year's juried prize goes to Julian Rivera for his series, Learning to be Brave. I stood there in shock as people applauded. Connor hugged me tight, whispering congratulations in my ear. Dr. Chen beckoned me forward, and somehow I made it to the front of the room to accept a check for $5,000 and shake hands with the jurors. In my brief acceptance speech, I thanked Dr. Chen, the art department, and the person who inspired these pieces. You know who you are. Connor was grinning so hard I thought his face might split. That night we celebrated at his apartment, just the two of us, cheap champagne that Keisha had given us and takeout pizza. We sat on his couch and I handed him the check from the prize money. "What's this?" he asked. "For your tuition, it should cover most of next semester." "Julian, I can't." "Yes, you can. You think I could have made any of that work without you? You're literally the subject of half those pieces. This is as much yours as it is mine." He stared at the check, then at me. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me help. Say we're in this together." "We're in this together," he repeated softly. Then he kissed me deep and slow, and we didn't talk for a while after that. The semester ended with Connor's grades intact and his tuition paid for the spring. His father still wasn't speaking to him, but his mother called every week. Some of his teammates had fully accepted us, some were still adjusting, and a few had distanced themselves completely. But Connor had stopped letting their opinions dictate his life. We spent winter break apart, him reluctantly going back to Texas to see his mother, me staying in the dorms to avoid my own family complications, but we texted constantly and video called every night. On Christmas Eve, Connor called me from his childhood bedroom. "I told my mom about you," he said. "Really told her, showed her pictures, talked about how we met, everything." "How did she take it?" "She cried, but then she hugged me and said she wants to meet you. Said anyone who makes her son this happy must be pretty special." I felt my own eyes welling up. Really? Really, she's working on my dad, says he'll come around eventually. He's just stubborn and scared of what people will think. "Sounds familiar," I said gently. Connor laughed. "Yeah, I get it from him apparently." Spring semester started with a sense of new beginnings. Connor was lighter, freer, more himself than I'd ever seen him. He held my hand on campus without hesitation. He introduced me to his professors as his boyfriend. He stopped trying to compartmentalize his life into separate boxes. And slowly, beautifully, people adapted. The team stopped making it a thing. Classmates who'd been uncomfortable got used to seeing us together. The campus LGBTQ+ organization reached out and invited us to events. We weren't pioneers, there were other queer students at Whitmore, other couples navigating the same waters, but we were visible and that mattered. In February, the campus newspaper did a feature on student athletes and mental health. Connor agreed to be interviewed and he talked candidly about the pressure to conform, the fear of disappointing people, and how coming out had actually made him a better player because he wasn't wasting energy hiding. The article went viral on social media. Connor started getting messages from other athletes, high school kids, college students, even a few pros thanking him for his honesty, saying he'd given them courage. One night, lying in my bed while snow fell outside, Connor showed me some of the messages. "Listen to this one," he said. "I'm a junior in high school and I play basketball and I've been terrified to tell anyone I'm gay, but seeing you be open about it, seeing that you didn't lose everything, it makes me think maybe I can do it too. Thank you for being brave." His voice broke on the last word. "You're changing lives," I said. "We're changing lives. This wouldn't have happened without you teaching me that being true to myself matters more than other people's approval." "I didn't teach you that, you figured it out on your own." "You helped," he insisted. He set down his phone and pulled me closer. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "That day in the library when I looked up and saw you watching me, I felt seen for the first time in my life. Not as the quarterback or the team captain or Coach Matthew's son, just as me, Connor, and that's what I've been chasing ever since, that feeling of being truly seen." I kissed him softly. "I see you, all of you, and I love what I see." "I love you too, so damn much." We fell asleep tangled together, and I dreamed of spring, of new beginnings, of a future where we didn't have to fight so hard just to be ourselves. Spring came to Whitmore like a revelation. The snow melted, revealing grass that had forgotten how to be green. Trees that had been skeletal and bare suddenly erupted in clouds of pink and white blossoms. The air smelled like earth and growth and possibility. Connor was in his final semester preparing to graduate. The reality of it hung over us like a shadow we tried to ignore. What would happen after graduation? Would he get drafted? Would he go pro? Would there be a place for me in whatever came next? We didn't talk about it much. It was easier to live in the moment, to enjoy the time we had together without worrying about the future. But the future had a way of demanding attention. In March, Connor got invited to participate in the NFL scouting combine. It was a huge deal. Only the top college prospects got invitations, and a good showing could make or break a draft position. "I'm not going," he told me over coffee at the brew house. "What, Connor, you have to go?" "I don't have to do anything. This is your dream, you've been working toward this your whole life." He stirred his coffee, not meeting my eyes. "Things change, dreams change. Not this one. I've seen you on that field. I've seen your face when you talk about playing professionally. That dream hasn't changed." "But what about us?" There it was, the question we'd both been avoiding. "What about us?" I echoed. "If I go pro, and that's a big if, I'd have to move, could be anywhere. You're only a sophomore, you've got 2 more years here. I can't ask you to give that up and follow me to some random city." "You're not asking, but I'd do it anyway." He looked up sharply. "Julian, I'm serious. You think I can't transfer, that I can't finish my degree somewhere else? Schools have art programs everywhere." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple. You're overthinking this. One of us has to," he said, but he was smiling slightly. "Go to the combine, show them what you can do, and then we'll figure out the rest, together." He reached across the table and took my hand. "You make it sound so easy." It is easy. The hard part was figuring out we wanted to be together. Everything else is just logistics. Connor went to the combine. I stayed behind in Whitmore, refreshing Twitter obsessively for updates, watching shaky phone videos of his drills. He killed it. Top marks in the 40-yard dash for quarterbacks, perfect spirals in the throwing session, high praise from scouts. When he came back, he was buzzing with energy and possibility. "They think I could go in the 3rd or 4th round," he said, barely able to contain his excitement. "Maybe higher if I have a good pro day." "That's amazing. Teams are interested, real teams, NFL teams." He spun me around in my dorm room, both of us laughing. "This is actually happening. I'm so proud of you." He set me down and kissed me thoroughly. "Come with me, wherever I end up, come with me." "Connor, I know it's crazy, I know it's asking a lot, but I can't imagine doing this without you. You're my person, Julian, my best friend and my partner, and the only one who sees me for who I really am." "What about school? You transfer, or take a year off and go back, or do online classes. I don't know, we'll figure it out, but please say you'll at least think about it." How could I say no to that? To the hope and love in his eyes, to the promise of a future together, to the adventure of it all. "I'll think about it," I promised. But I already knew my answer. I talked to Dr. Chen the next week, told her about Connor's prospects, about the possibility of moving. "Do you want to go?" she asked bluntly. "Yes, but I don't want to throw away my education either." "You wouldn't be throwing it away, you'd be adapting it." She pulled out a folder. "I've been thinking about this since your exhibition. You've got real talent, Julian, the kind that doesn't need a specific institution to flourish. You could transfer, yes, or you could take what you've learned here and build on it independently." Yeah. "Independently how?" "Sell your work, take commissions, build a portfolio. Most successful artists don't have traditional careers anyway, they make their own path," she smiled. "Besides, loving someone enough to take a risk on them, that's brave, and bravery makes for better art." That night I started researching cities with NFL teams, places Connor might end up. I looked at their art scenes, their galleries, their cost of living. I let myself imagine a life beyond Whitmore, a studio apartment in a new city, my easel by the window, Connor coming home from practice, building a life together beyond the protective bubble of college. It was terrifying, it was exhilarating. It was real. April brought Connor's pro day, a final chance for scouts to evaluate him on his home turf. The practice field was crowded with clipboard-wielding professionals, cameras, and a handful of NFL coaches. I watched from the sidelines with Connor's teammates, watched him throw pass after perfect pass, watched him field questions with poise, watched him be himself, confident but humble, talented but hardworking. After it was over, one of the scouts approached us. He was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes. "You must be Julian," he said. I blinked, yes. "Connor mentioned you, said you're the reason he's been playing with such heart this season," he smiled. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, that kid's special." After he walked away, Connor appeared at my side, sweaty and grinning. "What did he say?" "That you're special." "Damn right I am, I've got you, don't I?" The draft was in late April. Connor didn't expect to get picked in the first round. That was reserved for the surefire stars, the Heisman winners and record breakers. But the second or third round was possible. We watched it together in his apartment, surrounded by teammates and friends. The TV showed the draft stage in New York, the commissioner calling out names, young men putting on team jerseys and shaking hands. The first round came and went, no Connor. The second round started, still nothing. By the third round, Connor was getting nervous. His leg bounced up and down. He kept checking his phone even though his agent had said he'd call the moment there was news. Halfway through the third round, his phone rang. Everyone went silent. Connor answered it, stepped into his bedroom for privacy. He was in there for maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. When he came back out, his face was carefully neutral. Then he broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. "I'm going to Denver," he said. "The Broncos just picked me, 76th overall." The apartment erupted. People were screaming, hugging, jumping up and down. Someone popped a champagne bottle. I stood there, overwhelmed with pride and joy and a little bit of fear about what this meant. Connor pushed through the crowd to me and picked me up in a bear hug. "We're going to Denver." "We?" I asked, even though I already knew what he meant. "We, you and me, together. Say yes, Julian, please say yes." Everyone was watching us now, his teammates, his friends, all of them waiting for my answer. I thought about Whitmore, about the familiar comfort of this campus and this town. I thought about my degree, still 2 years from completion. I thought about the risk of following him, of building a life in a place I'd never been with a person I'd only known for 7 months. And then I thought about Connor, about coffee shop afternoons and stolen kisses, about the way he looked at me like I was his whole world, about learning to be brave together. "Yes," I said, "absolutely yes." He kissed me right there in front of everyone, and the apartment erupted again in cheers. That night, after everyone had left and it was just the two of us, we lay in his bed making plans. "We'll find an apartment near the training facility," Connor said. "Somewhere with good light for your studio, and you can connect with the art scene there. Denver has galleries, right?" "Lots of them," I looked it up. "Of course you did," he kissed my temple. "I'll be busy with training and practices, especially at first, but my off-season is longer than college. We'll have time together." "I'm not worried about time, I'm worried about you getting sick of me." "Impossible, I could spend every minute of every day with you and it wouldn't be enough." "Sap," I teased. "You're sap." We fell asleep making lists, things to pack, things to buy, places to visit, building a future in whispers and dreams. Graduation came on a perfect May morning. The sky was cloudless, the temperature ideal, the quad filled with rows of white chairs and families dressed in their Sunday best. I sat in the audience with my camera, watching Connor receive his diploma. He'd graduated cum laude despite everything, the stress of coming out, the job juggling, the constant pressure of balancing athletics and academics. When they called his name, he walked across that stage with his head held high. The stadium announcer mentioned his NFL draft selection and the crowd cheered extra loud. Connor stopped at center stage, accepted his diploma and turned to scan the crowd. Our eyes met, he grinned and I could see him mouth the words, "We did it." After the ceremony, I fought through the crowds of families to find him. His mother was there, she'd flown in despite his father's refusal to come. She was a small woman with Connor's blue eyes and warm smile. "You must be Julian," she said, pulling me into a hug before I could even introduce myself. "I've heard so much about you." "All good, I hope." "All wonderful, my son hasn't stopped talking about you for months." She held me at arm's length, studying my face. "Thank you." "For what?" "For loving him, for giving him the courage to be himself, for making him happy." Her eyes filled with tears. "I always wanted that for him, happiness. It took me a while to understand that it might look different than I expected, but seeing him now." She glanced at Connor, who was hugging his old professors. "He's radiant, that's because of you." I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her again. Connor's father called that night. I wasn't in the room. Connor took the call outside, but when he came back in, he was crying. "Dad said he's proud of me," Connor said, voice breaking. "He still doesn't understand, still thinks this is a phase or a mistake, but he said he loves me and he's proud I'm going pro." "That's something," I said carefully. "It's more than I expected. Maybe eventually he'll come around all the way, but for now it's enough." We left for Denver in early June, packed up Connor's truck with everything we owned, which wasn't much, and drove west. 2 days on the highway, cheap motels, gas station coffee, and endless conversations about everything and nothing. When we finally crossed into Colorado and saw the Rocky Mountains rising in the distance, Connor reached over and took my hand. "Last chance to change your mind," he said, but he was smiling. "Not a chance, you're stuck with me." "Good, because I don't know how to do this without you." "You'd figure it out, you're Connor Matthews, star quarterback, NFL draft pick, you can do anything." "Not without you, with you, I can do anything. Without you, I'm just a guy who throws a ball." We found an apartment in a neighborhood called Capitol Hill, an old converted Victorian with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and big windows that let in floods of natural light. It was more expensive than Connor's college housing, but the NFL signing bonus helped, and it had a spare bedroom that was perfect for my studio. I set up my easel by the window and started painting Denver. The mountains, the downtown skyline, the street scenes, and Connor, always Connor in this new light, this new life. He started training camp in July, and I watched him drive off each morning in his Broncos gear, barely able to believe this was real, that we'd made it here, that we were doing this. I connected with local galleries, started showing my work, got a few commissions. It wasn't steady income yet, but it was a start. And I enrolled in online classes to finish my degree, 2 or 3 at a time, working around Connor's schedule. Some of his teammates knew about us right away. Connor was open about having a boyfriend, introducing me at team events without hesitation. Others found out gradually. There were a few uncomfortable moments, some awkward questions, but mostly acceptance. Professional athletes, it turned out, cared more about winning than about their quarterback's personal life. We built a life, slowly, carefully together, morning coffee before Connor's early practices, evenings cooking dinner in our tiny kitchen, weekends exploring the city, hiking in